opinion and from what I've seen, we've really experienced very limited technology innovation to support the speed and sophistication that we need to work at, right? I see a ton of innovation and have seen a ton of innovation out there for making the seller's job easier and more effective, or marketers' jobs easier and more effective. And I've, felt like we've been a little bit left behind as RevOps and sales ops people. So this is why I'm so excited to talk to you today about kind of what I see coming with the innovations in AI and et cetera. So, as we all know, we have endless amounts of data to parse through at any given time. And that's, data is really what we need in order to do our jobs effectively. And there's so much data because there's a proliferation of all these tools out there. I mean, think about your tech stack and how many different tools are out there, and now how data is sort of distributed across a lot of those different systems. None of them talk to each other, and so it can be hard to really kind of weave together the big picture. We've got the siloed data and just a ton of variables that are impacting revenue here and there. And what we see is a lot of companies still struggle to meaningfully interpret what their data is telling them. And then put those insights into action. And so this has really resulted in, revenue strategists and leadership being, a part art and part guesswork, to be honest. And, our point of view is that feeling a little bit overwhelmed. And so we've done some research here on this subject, just to kind of validate what we've been seeing and what our point of view is. And so we did a research study across about 270 companies to really try to hone in on, like, how real is this problem where we're drowning in data, yet we're having trouble interpreting it and using it to make really revenue impacting decisions that really kind of contribute to the growth of the company. And what we found is pretty astounding, actually, in the numbers here. And so what we found is that many people are just simply just not confident that the annual plan that they've put into place can even really be achieved, or that there's a lot of mistrust around pipeline information, that there is just a huge amount of reactivity going on. And we've seen statistics where, a very high degree of, RevOps and CROs times is really spent firefighting instead of, being strategic, being proactive and preemptive about making decisions in the business that can impact kind of how things are going to turn out at the end of the year. And so, this is all to say that, I think we're collectively feeling all this pressure and feeling all this still uncertainty. So I really love this slide so much because I think it speaks to the complexity that we're all dealing with, particularly in terms of analytics. There's almost a very high volume of variables involved in growing revenue and running revenue, and those are all interconnected at the end of the day. And understanding how they're all connected and understanding the different ways in which they can impact each other, that's an incredibly complex thing to try to understand and model out. And so this is why we feel AI is the perfect application for RevOps and for CROs who are trying to grow and run companies effectively. This is the type of work that we need to be able to do and synthesize and understand what's happening in the business and model out changes into the future to understand if we take certain measures now, what will happen on the other side of it, or what happens if I do this, or can you give me recommendations on what to do if I see this problem? So I think that, these AI systems that are out there now that can parse an incredibly high amount of data, that can do it very, very quickly, and, with context around go-to-market, that understands how go-to-market levers work and understand the metrics that are important behind go-to-market and revenue operations. I think this is, to me, the perfect example of why AI is so necessary for this time in the RevOps profession. And just a couple of examples of the things that get thrown at us, right? Of these are some of the sometimes feel like unreasonable demands or whatever, but these are true. That sometimes you are being asked to do more with less people, and freeze your headcount or reduce your marketing spend or both, but still kind of achieve the same amount of growth. And it's important to be able to model out, different scenarios to figure out how you're going to get there. And frankly, if we're working in Excel, we're putting ourselves at a disadvantage because, it's a 40-year-old technology that's just not really built for some of the amount of data that we need to work with and the speed and sophistication that we need to do our work with. Another example, is just, can be simple as, understanding what's going on with your pipeline and your conversions. I know I have a conversion problem, but what do I do about that? What's the cause? How do I know what's happening there? And so AI is again, a perfect example of, how we can look deeper into some of these problems very, very quickly with a high degree of sophistication to understand the individual opportunities. What are some of the patterns that we're seeing in those opportunities? Let's access the call transcripts and find out what the customers are saying in these stages where we're having a conversion problem, et cetera. So there's just so much possibility in tapping into AI capabilities here that can really get us to the next level of understanding and solving some of these problems. So we have kind of thought this through, and we're recognizing that we're kind of in a trap here with RevOps. We're doing the best we can with our planning. We are, putting those plans into place, working as hard and as fast as we can, assuming that the execution will match that plan. Oftentimes, there are signals telling us, hey, there's going to be, some difficulty here, or, you've got breakdowns in your process or revenue leakage here. And those signals can sometimes go unnoticed because unless you're looking for them every day or attuned to these things, it can be really easy to miss those things and then understand what the impact can be. So, you're in a reaction mode. You are again trying to react to those things and recover some of those issues that you're finding. And, what we're seeing is so many missed targets and, people missing quotas and all of that. And so the whole cycle just kind of repeats itself. And so what we feel is really necessary here is to become much, much more proactive in understanding what is about to happen in the future, what could happen, what are my vulnerabilities right now, and just tell me what those are, because that's again a perfect application for AI to be kind of watching and monitoring your real-time data and telling you what's happening, because it understands the go-to-market and some of these issues that should be surfaced sooner rather than later. So a little bit about our point of view here, and we've kind of coined the phrase growth AI, right? AI that is purpose built for the job of growing revenue. We've kind of rallying around this concept where you really need a domain specific AI technology that understands what to look for, what the metrics are, identify patterns, give it some guardrails, right? So it doesn't do some crazy hallucinations and making mistakes, right? So giving it some very clear rules around what it can do as it's doing its analysis and identification, and then have it predict what are the things that you need to look at today, tomorrow, next week, so that you have a better shot at getting ahead of problems and fixing them before you end up doing the look back and it's too late at that point. And what I love about this is that if I think about myself as a revenue operations strategist, I want to know what my biggest problems are, and how bad is that problem? How much money is associated to that? How much revenue is associated to that problem? Because those are the ones I want to fix first. So I want to understand the impact. I want to understand how to prioritize my work. And that helps me kind of get out of a lot of the weeds of the day-to-day firefighting, right? If I realize, okay, my biggest vulnerability here is really the conversion rate of, my opportunities, then I'm going to look deeper into that problem and I'm going to investigate that. And I'm going to work with AI to help me kind of dig deeper and give me recommendations on what I should do about that. Of course, being an experienced person, you are always in the loop on that. You always have the human kind of side of it to, pressure test, but you have AI there as kind of your assistant to help you kind of work through problems and give you more information that you need in order to make the best decisions possible. So this is the kind of thing that X Factor is making possible. So again, just a little bit more about why the AI by X Factor we think is a must-have, and that is to kind of get ahead of those problems before they become, before it's too late and before they become even worse. And so we can do things like correlate sales capacity and pipeline projections for the year. To let you know if you've got enough people and productivity on your team, to match the pipeline that you're generating, or vice versa. Do you have enough pipeline for the people that you've got on board, et cetera. So these are things that can be really hard to model out if you're using Excel spreadsheets or just standard BI dashboards. These are some, complex projections that we can help weave together to give the big picture. Spotting choke points before they cost you. This is an important piece that, again, the ability for a system to constantly be analyzing areas that are breaking down without you really even knowing it, surfacing those patterns and showing you where those friction points are can really help. And sometimes that signifies a process problem. Like, oh, I don't have a really great lead conversion handoff process between my BDRs and my reps. So that's a process thing that I might want to fix, but that's a choke point that might be surfaced as an example. Things like the slow time to ramp salespeople, that can be really impacting the business. And so understanding what your actual ramp time is, how long it takes reps to get to that top level of productivity, that's a really important metric and one of those harder ones to get your arms around quickly. And so, but that can make a huge impact if you can, increase the speed at which your reps can ramp. Another example would be to understand opportunity and lead gaps. Like, hey, you're not going to have enough opportunities before the end of the year to make your number. Like, that's an important thing to know really, really early on in the year, so that you can work together with your marketers to figure out, how you're going to fill that funnel, or your partners, how you're going to fill up that funnel for that, close that gap. We see a lot of times a lot of obsessing over quarterly forecasts. You're in the moment, you're really trying hard to close your quarter and hit that target. And there is so much great rigor and discipline around that quarterly forecasting. However, a lot of times people lose sight of, the pipeline that needs to be built ahead of time so that you end up having enough opportunities to close when it does come to the end of the quarter. So that's an example of getting proactive with stuff like this. One of the things that I think is so interesting too about AI innovations here with RevOps is getting some recommendations. Really tell me what to do about this problem, or give me some ideas, give me some more details around this. Go, like I said, call transcripts for what might be going on here. Ask questions. Use AI like your kind of your advisor and your analyst to go, dig deeper and find out, but also use it to, give you some ideas that you may not have thought about on your own. Or it might even help reinforce things that you knew were a good idea and you kind of needed, a second opinion. That's happened to me a couple of times. And, I think another great advantage for RevOps to use AI by X Factor would be, simulations. It's so important to try to understand what will happen if you put a certain strategy into place, or you put a certain organizational structure into place. Like, what is the outcome of that? How can I look into the future and see what's going to happen with that? And if I don't like that outcome, if I don't think that that's going to get me where I need to be, well, what are some of those levers that can help me improve my odds of getting to that target that's been assigned? How can I, try to paint a picture of what we need to do in order to get there? And simulation is really the key for that. And that's a complex piece of work to do for any type of scenario that you're trying to understand the future impact of. So, we're really excited about simulation capabilities when it comes to RevOps, because I think we all can really benefit from that visibility. So all this is to say, AI is not here to replace anybody. It is here to supercharge. And I definitely see the possibilities around this in all types of AI. I mean, I use Gen AI myself for lots of things, writing and, putting some research together and things like that. But at the end of the day, I'm the human in the loop, and I'm there. It's just making me work, faster, more productively. And, we definitely want to give that superpower to RevOps, and give them a tool that is for them and for the business of growing the revenue, experimenting or simulating different outcomes, and making smarter decisions at the end of the day, and using your time in the best way possible. So putting together your instinct, as well as a system that's giving you signals and surfacing things you might not know have been ongoing, is a huge competitive advantage. It's a huge leap in visibility into what's going on and understanding, and using that knowledge to make decisions. And so, let's stop guessing, and let's stop firefighting, and let's get to the work of, unlocking the science of growth. So, that is the presentation from us today from X Factor. I hope you guys have all had a great revolt this week. Happy to have been part of it, and hope to connect with some of you on LinkedIn and in the community. So thank you very much.
Hey guys, if you have any questions, I think, yeah, so what role is actually doing this area? Stephanie, can you take that? So you can hear me, right?
What was the question?
What role is actually doing this area?
What role?
Yeah.
We're seeing interest in this from a variety of roles, right? And it sort of depends on how the responsibilities are allocated in an organization. In situations where RevOps is a strategic partner to the leadership team, for sure RevOps is, the power user and the operator of a lot of this technology. However, we also see chief revenue officers, chief financial officers interested in this because of the increased visibility and because of the way that you can interact with your data in sort of natural language now. You can ask it questions and you can tell it to help you understand things better. And so it's sort of making the data more accessible to leadership and executives in the way that they want to interact with it.
Perfect. Any other questions? I think everybody has mentioned fantastic session. Thank you so much, Stephanie. I think that's it for today, I believe. Just wait for a couple more minutes and see if we have any questions.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Yeah, that was sneaky. You're supposed to tell me I'm going on camera. I could have fixed my hair, but thank you. So good morning, Stephanie. Thank you. Brilliant. I would love to understand what your toolkit is. I think in the entirety of the presentation, and you framed it several different ways, just the maze of trying to merge Excel worksheets. Of course, God help the company still doing that, of which we know there's so many. But when you characterize your platform, as I think effectively you were kind of talking through, what are the skill sets? I guess I'm trying to get a visual. One of the big things with almost every company, as soon as they hear AI, is how are you going to roll it out? What's your pilot? How are you going to prove it? oh, so much money, cultural change management. I mean, there's a whole myriad of things that have to happen long before you even begin to talk about this, this amazing capability. So there's a piece before it, and then there's the tool itself. So maybe you can share some insight on how you've either done it, what you think that looks like, and what everyone in the call would have to remember, because it's not one and done, and then lo and behold, you're in the promised land. That makes sense.
Yes, lots to unpack there, but I think having an AI strategy is important in general for companies. I think most of them do at this point, and are looking for ways to responsibly and effectively deploy AI solutions. I think there's been a bit of
You're making the assumption everyone does. I would actually differ on that. I would say there's
Okay.
probably a lot less of that than we would assume. That would be my
Okay.
observation. But continue,
Okay.
please.
Okay. We're targeting an industry with technology, B2B, software, cybersecurity, things like that. These companies tend to be maybe a little bit more forward thinking, but you're right. There are other industries out there that may be sort of just starting the journey of becoming AI forward in their technology stack. And it is a little bit daunting. I think we are hearing a lot of uncertainty about AI technologies. There's been some, research done that, a huge proportion of AI projects kind of fail because they really don't produce the value that they had anticipated. And that is all true. And I think what needs to happen is that one, an AI strategy in a company needs to be kind of formulated to start with. And number two is, research is showing that, purpose-built, domain-specific AI, for very specific jobs is going to be the most successful because it is given, specific information in which to operate, guardrails, et cetera. An example would be, the game of chess. I read an article in the New York Times recently that compared, trying to play chess with, a generic Gen AI tool is really hard. You'll get, hallucinations and, moves that aren't legal in the game, right? Because it doesn't really know and it's trying to please you. However, if you play chess with a domain-specific AI tool built to play chess, it's going to know how to play chess, and it's not going to make illegal moves or try to it won't make mistakes as it would in another AI tool because it understands the game of chess and it has rules and it's programmed to not make those mistakes. And the same is true for any other technology, I would say, right? If you're an architect and you need to build a building, you're not going to try to do that with, Chat GPT by itself. You're going to need an AI tool that is meant for architects that knows building codes and, is going to give you reliable information. And the same is true for, this job of revenue operations, of growing a company. Sure, you can use Gen AI for a lot of things that, you're doing in your day-to-day, but if you're trying to make decisions that are revenue impacting and you want to know all the moves and, the different ways in which you can model out those moves, this is definitely something to look at to help you do that.
So the only last thing is almost everything I heard here, there are some prerequisites to success in simple terms. And thus, I would imagine when your team is out there talking about your capabilities, you've probably got a punch list. I would imagine, or I'm thinking out loud, that you would have your magic list of, here are the 25 things we want to talk about to make sure that you're AI forward and AI ready for what we can do for you. So is that a fair statement? And if not, then I guess maybe you may have some thoughts on where we might look for that sort of thing. Because in the end, if you don't show up to any game or any project, you're gonna, you got the promise makers on the one side, that's the sales guys, and then you got the promise keepers, the ones that have to implement it. So
yeah,
is there such a thing?
the common things that we run across is, of course, security checks. We want to make sure that the platform that is we've built is secure, that it's not being, their data is not being used in a way that they don't want it to, that their data is not being shared with other people. And so we have very strict, security protocol that we follow with the architecture of our platform, but also, just being able to demonstrate that back to customers in a way that makes them feel comfortable. So that's usually the main hurdle we have to kind of get over. But from there, it's a fairly straightforward, process to get going with it. It does rely on CRM data right now. So we are hooking into a CRM like Salesforce and using that data to kind of, again, bring those things to the surface, do very, sophisticated analysis. We do a lot of, advanced algorithmic work to figure out a lot of their metrics, give baselines, make predictions and things like that. So yeah, it's a process, but it's not a heavy lift in terms of implementation. It can get going fairly quickly because the math is kind of built in, and so away we go. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of how we.
Thank you, Stephanie. And there are prerequisites, and that's pretty customary. But thank you. I appreciate the insight.
Yeah.
Thank you, Diva.
Thank you. Stephanie, just a follow-up question on Curtis' comment from Elizabeth. With a more complex buying process with far more stakeholders involved, how do you envision dealing with varying AI knowledge levels?
Yeah, that's a great question. How do we deal with varying AI knowledge levels? I mean, we are very, very open to educating customers about AI, getting into detail about the architecture of our platform, about how their data is being used, et cetera. And so typically, when we go through those types of discussions, we can oftentimes people more at ease about how it would be to deploy a solution like ours in their environment. So sometimes it's just their fear or reticence about putting AI in is just their lack of knowledge around the subject or lack of understanding. And so we do spend a lot of time with customers, kind of talking with them about those things.
Sorry, there's one more question from Bill Perkins. How agile is the forecasting component?
How agile is the forecasting component? So again, our platform will produce a forecast both for pipeline and for capacity. So you kind of have those two kind of views into the performance of your company. This is not for sales reps. So I want to make that clear. Of this tool that we've built and that we're talking about today is for RevOps. It's for operators. It's for analysts. It's for the leadership team to be able to understand and interact better with their data and monetize their data a little bit better. This is not a quarterly forecasting tool like a Clary or some of the other ones out there. Those are great for what they do, which is inspecting opportunities very granularly, understanding activity, making determinations on the likelihood of them closing and sort of giving that. We're not here to replace those types of tools. We're doing that, but we're doing that more for the RevOps team to kind of pressure test and give views on different aspects of the performance of the business, not just the quarterly forecast. So I don't know if that totally answers the question, but if there's more to it, feel free to jump in.
I think that's it in terms of the questions. Yeah, they said perfectly answers my question. Thank you. Yeah, lovely. So any other questions, please drop on the chat. And we also have a short poll, so please take it in the meantime. And yeah, so I think can we wait for a minute just to see if we have any questions?
Sure.
I think there's, one question. How large is the market going forward to this solution?
How large is the market? I mean, it seems pretty wide open to us right now. I don't know if I have a number that I can throw out there, but we're seeing an incredibly huge, leap in the amount of revenue that is being generated by AI technologies. I think probably one of the biggest, tech transformations in history. And so, it's an incredibly huge market, and, we're excited to try to capture a piece of that.
Sounds amazing. So this one last question, I think we have, 5 more minutes to take it. So from Kanoko Tone, what do you suggest doing to bring on tools like this when every budget is frozen? For example, like tech budget is frozen or pressure to cut down, headcount is frozen, or entire team is, are fed, etc.
Yeah, I think it's really about understanding what the value impact would be by implementing a solution like this. Is it, around improving the productivity of the team, and therefore there are gains to be had? Deeper insights leads to better decisions, to better productivity, et cetera. So it's about a waterfall, and that there can definitely be, a revenue number tied to that improvement. So sometimes, we go that route. Also, time is money. Your time is valuable. Your productivity is valuable. You could be doing more with less potentially. If they're kind of freezing headcount, this can allow you to, be more productive and more, operate with more sophistication than you could maybe with, instead of adding 2 or 3 more people. So there's definitely ways to kind of, position this. For sure, it's an expenditure, but again, what we are seeing is that a lot of companies are opening up budget for AI technologies, that they have initiatives around this, and are exploring ways in which to kind of make a big impact in the business. So it's worth looking into.
I think that definitely answers this question. I think that's a big offer today. So just reminding everyone just to take the poll. It's a very short poll. In the meantime, thank you so much for your session. It was really good. It was very informative. And probably we'll see you soon in the next call.
Terrific. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Right.